Yo, what's up? It's been a good while. I was working 10 to 12 hours during the summer season, so I didn't have any time to really play any games or make videos. And honestly, I didn't really have the energy to do any of that either. So, yeah, here I am. Now I'm back 3 months later, feeling up to making something. So, yeah. Today I want to talk about Lies of P, a game that I started during the summer season, but I didn't really finish it until the 2nd of September, I remember correctly, and that was just the base game. After that, I played Overture, and yeah, it's been a while since I played it. And I want to give my thoughts about it because yeah, I really enjoyed this game. So, where do I start? Well, I'll start by saying I think it's one of my favorite Souls-like games I've played, and I have played quite a few, not that many, but from the ones that I've played, it's easily my favorite. I will say it's so good that if someone told me From Software made this game, I think I could believe them. I just think that the quality of this game is up to From Software standards that it's honestly believable. This game has a lot of similarities with Dark Souls, Sekiro, and Bloodborne. I definitely want to say mostly Bloodborne, but it takes a little bit of everything and mashes it together and then adding its own unique twist to just make it something completely different. And honestly, I fell in love with it because of how good it really is. I'll start off by saying that it's very linear compared to Dark Souls 1 and Elden Ring. It's similar to like Sekiro and Bloodborne and how it's just like going from one area to the other, and basically like in a straight path with little branching paths that you can take just to find hidden items and stuff. And yeah, I mean it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. I think it really is a good thing for this kind of game. The other thing is that makes it similar to Souls is that the storytelling is similar in that you can get details of lore from items and speaking with NPCs and stuff. But when it comes to the main story of the game, it's very upfront, telling you what's going on, what your objective is, and I think it's really good. I fell in love with the story in this game, and I think that's something that made me really, really like this game is mostly the story. Of course, with the gameplay, the combat. I'm not gonna get too in depth about the story because I think it's one that I think you should just experience yourself and not really look too much into it. Just play the game and beat it. And I think you will enjoy it a lot more. That's how I enjoyed it. And honestly, made me just really love this game. So, yeah, I highly recommend if you play this game, play it blindly and sit down and just enjoy what you're experiencing. I want to get more in depth about the combat since I think that's usually one of the more important aspects of a Souls like and Souls game. The best way to describe the combat is by saying it's a mixture of Sekiro and Bloodborne while adding its own flair in the mix. Each weapon you get, you can change the handle of the blade you want to use so that you can have different movesets, and doing that also changes the scaling of the weapon. So, for example, you can use a greatsword blade with a different handle that will make it scale with technique instead of its original handle that makes it scale with motivity, while also changing the move set because the said handle is just different, right? I think that's great and unique because you can create the weapon combo that you want, and that helps you express how you like playing your games, right? If you want to play super aggro, you can just find the right combination that lets you play super aggro. Or if you want to play more passive, then you just try to figure out what's a good way to play passive. You can also get boss weapons where you can't change anything, but they just have usually the best scaling. And, I personally found myself using two, three different boss weapons that scaled with motivity because for me personally, I like running strength builds. So I just looked for weapons that I liked to play with. that scaled with motivity and just kind of swap between them depending on what I felt was the best in the current situation. Let's talk about defensive options. In Souls games, your defensive options are either block, dodge roll, or parries. Dodge roll became the most well known characteristic of a Souls or Souls like game, and most of them just rely on dodging. Sekiro had sidestepping, but was nowhere near as good as dodge rolling or the sidestepping in Bloodborne. Instead, you have to rely way more on parrying, jumping specific attacks like sweeps, and doing Mikiri counter on attacks that were not parryable that popped up a symbol. So this game took sidestepping from Bloodborne and parrying from Sekiro, with of course blocking as the main defensive options. If you thought parrying in Sekiro was hard, Lies of P's parry window is a lot smaller, so you have to be very accurate on when you're parrying compared to Sekiro. With blocking, it decreases the amount of damage you take compared to just getting hit normally, of course, but you also get your health to go down a bit and you have a gray health. And basically, it kind of pulls the rallying system from Bloodborne, where if you get hit, you're able to recover your health back if you attack the enemy. So they did it with blocking this time around, and I think that's a pretty neat change on that. So if you're not the best at parrying, you can block more and have a chance to gain your health back. There are attacks you can't block, so you have no choice to parry, and that's indicated by the enemy glowing red. There's also a posture mechanic where if you hit the enemy enough times, their health bar will glow white, and you can hit them with a charged heavy attack or a fable art that can cause enemies to stagger. This will give you a fatal attack, like if you parry in Bloodborne or backstabs and parries in Dark Souls. I will say, the sound of the fatal attacks make them very satisfying to land, kind of like how the visceral attacks also sound and feel in Bloodborne. There are also changeable arms that have different scalings and attacks. It's similar to the prosthetics from Sekiro, but you can upgrade them to give you different effects and damage. It really helps you build your own playstyle. Now, one thing unique to Lies of P compared to other Souls games and Souls likes that there's a tree that you spend a currency called Kori to give you passive buffs that will also lead to you getting something good like more charges for your healing, better dodging, and other little weird passives. It's an interesting change on how you get charges for your flask compared to Dark Souls games where you just find the right item that you give to an NPC to increase your flask. With all that said, I think it's easily one of my favorite Souls-like games, just in combat, because there's so many different variations of builds you can do just because you can just swap out handles, blades. So, it's just great. You can do many different playthroughs and play completely different just because you did a different combo that you didn't try out before. And to me, that's freaking awesome. Now then, I'll talk a little bit about the graphics and art style of the game. To me, it looks pretty good. It's more of a gothic version of the 19th century, which to me looks awesome, and it's pretty interesting. Not all areas are aesthetically pleasing, but they portray them pretty well. I want to mention the soundtrack because there are some fantastic tracks in this game. A majority of the time while you are going through the areas, there's no music besides certain areas with bosses and other places that help create atmosphere. Now, my personal favorites are from the record you can get from doing side quests that you can play at the Krot Hotel. Those tracks are the ones that made me fall in love with the game because, man, they're freaking fantastic. I have spent quite a bit of time listening to them on Spotify while I'm working. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the game's difficulty because I will say it's a pretty difficult game. It's easily one of the hardest Souls-like games I've played, and it might even be harder than some Souls games too. The only game I find to be harder than Lies of P is Elden Ring, and maybe Bloodborne at certain points. The pairing is what I think contributes more to the difficulty due to the tight window and with bosses having the red glowing attacks that require you to parry them. Attacks also tend to have crazy tracking at times, so you can't just dodge out of the way most of the time, even though there are times where you can get lucky enough to sidestep it just because you're in a weird position that causes them to miss. The areas in Lies of P aren't hard to go through, but the bigger enemy and bosses are what I would say are the harder aspects of the game compared to just the NPCs in the world. And that's where I'll start with the cons of Lies of P. And it's gonna have to be one of them difficulty. If you're someone that is relatively new to Souls games, this could be a really difficult game for you, and you might just drop it. I would say definitely do your research about this game before you buy it, especially if you're just brand new to Souls games. Another con I think you can really say is the linearity of the game. Can feel like a long hallway at times. It can be seen as that, honestly, and not everyone's going to like that. I mean, I didn't find any issues with that, but there are people out there that don't like linear games for whatever odd reason and think, you know, the games have to be a lot more open. Don't know why, but yeah. There's people out there like that, complain about weird things. Quite honestly, I think that's really it for the cons. I think this is just a game that's just really well made, and even those cons can be seen as pros at the same time, right? And I don't think they're really that huge of a detriment to the game in general and just your overall enjoyment of the game. I personally don't think the flaws are enough to make me believe it brings down the experience so much that it detracts from my enjoyment of the game. And not only that, the Overture DLC made me love the game more due to the extra content that added more narrative to the story of the base game and backstory as well, and all of the new weapons gave you more options for phone weapons to use if you wanted to try something different compared to what you had in the base game. So, at the end of the day, I honestly think it's a very good game. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Overture, and honestly, it added so much to my overall enjoyment of this game. Everything added from story, from lore, combat, interesting areas and bosses and everything. I think it just made me fall in love even more with the game, and I think if you buy this game, you have to get the DLC. You will not regret it. So with that, I highly recommend this game to anyone that just wants to play a challenging game, or if you're a Souls fan. It's that good in my opinion. And like I want to reiterate, this feels like this could be a game that From Software made. That's how good it is in my opinion. And with that, that's really about Lies of P. I just want to say, I freaking love this game. It's in my top 10 favorite games of all time now. So, yeah. I mean, that's subjective, right? Whether it could be that good or not, but to me it was really that good and I had a great time experiencing it. And Overture just made me love it even more just because honestly, the story was great. So, yeah, with that, I think that's really it. I want to say with Liza P, you enjoyed listening to me ramble a little bit or just talk about Liza P, give it a thumbs up. If not, who cares? But yeah, anyways, that's really it for this. Next video I want to work on and talk about is going to be Expedition 33. I also played that after I beat Liza P, and damn, that game is something else. That game is something else. So yeah, with that, peace out.